Hello, everybody. My name is Angie Peacock. Welcome back to my channel. If you haven't had a chance, please subscribe because the more people I can get, the bigger the guests I can get. And I have a few on my mind, but I need like more than 10,000. We're really close, so please help me get there. Today, I am bringing you a dear friend. Her name is Ellen, and I have known Ellen since 2014.
2010.
It was a 10? Okay. In 2010, I was on Seroquel, Effexor. I was 230 pounds, and Ellen met me when I was the heaviest I had ever been, when I had severe metabolic factors affecting me that made me get off Seroquel at that time. And I had my first service dog for only a year, and I met her at a service dog convention in Colorado. So we met each other back then. And then somehow she found me on Facebook all these years later when I was in the heat of my withdrawal in 2016. And she was 2 weeks behind me in withdrawal at the same time. And we were like, holy cow. Then later, fast forward, I was in a writing group that we would write every Sunday. And I invited Ellen to join us. So then Ellen joined, and then I kind of quit, and Ellen took my place, and she wrote some beautiful things. So the reason I wanted to bring Ellen on is because she's 10 years off, just like I am. So it gives you another perspective. But also, she has a very interesting spiritual path that she has walked in her life and in her healing. And I know that many of you are struggling with spiritual things, and we have some weird experiences. So we are going to get a little woo today. I think you can handle it. Most of the people that follow me are woo. If you're not, it's totally cool. Take what you need and leave the rest. Okay. This is going to be an open discussion. Some of the things I probably won't agree with, some things Ellen might not agree with, and you might not agree with. It is all cool. It's all dandy. It's in the spirit of healing and love and the journey. So welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. I love it that you're doing this, Angie. Thank you.
I know. And this is Ellen's first time she has ever shared her story. So I am honored to be the one that she can do that with, that she feels safe enough to do that with. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. You're the only one I feel safe enough to do this with, Angie.
That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's just start to build the terrain.
Okay.
What led you to being prescribed medication in the first place?
Well, it was kind of a trifecta. It was actually several different things. I was at the top of my career. I was in public administration. I was at the top of my career, and I was also a consultant doing facilitation and training and doing all that stuff when my mother took her own life. And then 2 years, and then two months to the day, my brother was diagnosed with heart cancer, and he died 2.5 years later. And then 2.5 years after that, my father died. And this was all while I was at the top of I was in a very stressful work situation. And I was processing grief. It was overwhelming. And I was in a writing, at that time I was doing a lot of writing. So I decided, because I had savings and my dad had left me a little bit of money, I took some time off. I decided to take some time out of my career and write. I wanted to write my mother's story. I wanted to understand what led her to do what she did. And I really wanted to take that deep dive. So I did that. I bought some property and was living this beautiful place. And then 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, I was inundated with the presences of the dead. And I was trying to organize the story of my mother, and I was using, I'm a little woo, I was using the imagery of the tarot to look at the underworld that she was navigating, to look at the story from that point of view. And I kind of stepped through a trapdoor and wound up being picked up in the city of city of Vallejo, by cops, put in the back of a car, told don't piss all over the back of the car. And I thought, why is he telling me that? And then locked up and drugged. And I was told that I'd have to take those drugs for the rest of my life. And I was basically in an altered state. I was having a spiritual experience.
So then that led to more medications and treatment within the mental health system. So while you were a patient, what did you know about yourself, or what did you think about yourself while that was all happening?
Well, the thing that was, while I was a patient, the thing that baffled me was I'd asked the psychiatrist, first of all, I just want to say I couldn't get out of bed. I mean, the two drugs I was being given were so heavy. It was Seroquel and Depakote they started me on. And I couldn't function. And so I said to the psychiatrist, I said, how do you know I have this thing? How do you know, what kind of tests do you give for what you're calling me? And it was bipolar disorder was what I was labeled with. And he said, well, there aren't any. And I said, well, what makes you think I have it? I mean, I've lost my whole family. I mean, I told him my story. I lost my family within a period of 5 years. I'm doing this high level of work at a very stressful, very out there kind of way. And I'm functioning. Okay, what makes you think he said, merely the fact, this is psychiatry wisdom. Okay, ready? Merely the fact that you were able to function while your entire family died shows that you have bipolar disorder.
That's a new one.
Yeah, I
what is that supposed to mean? Like, because it's like you can't win. I'm thinking about the grief exclusion from DSM-5. Like, if you have grief too long, then you're mentally ill too.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter
like,
how it goes.
Oh my God, yeah. That's ridiculous.
I know, wow. But that was his, and reasoning. I questioned it from the start, but then I was surrounded by indications that I was, because I was unable to function. I was unable to get out of bed. I did write the story of what I went through. It actually got published in the Yale Literary Journal in 2013. Finally, from the perspective of the altered state I was in, I wrote that story, and that and some pieces of my artwork got published in that journal. And fortunately, I wrote that right after I got out of the hospital, because by the time 3 or 4 months had gone by, I was unable to write anymore, and I couldn't put it together.
Okay, so I want to pull apart a couple of these threads, just because I know people in our audience will have questions. So what do you think caused you to slip into the altered state?
I believe that it was two different things. It was the combination of grief and I have been throughout my life, and I'll just own it now, very sensitive to energies. I have experienced the dead since I was a child. I have experienced interacting in other realms since I was a child. And so it is the default place that I slip into and I believe it has a lot to do with the trauma that I experienced as a child. But it also has to do with what I believe is a natural human quality of intuition. I think we all have this capability of perceiving things that are not necessarily physical, and certainly of perceiving energy. And so I was just energetically, I feel I was energetically overwhelmed by a set of circumstances that actually were trying to inform me about my nature, that it was
and might have been trying to help you work through it in some strange way that the mainstream doesn't understand. But I also think, like, you didn't have someone there to, like, help you navigate that. Like, before we would have shamans or something, and you're just kind of like, what the hell is going on here? I'm crazy.
Well, and you know, now that I'm I don't want to jump too far ahead, but now that I'm a medium and I've interacted with a lot of mediums, people who do the work that I'm doing now go through stuff like this, and they don't get hospitalized. But in my case, I did. I was, that's what happened.
So I'm going to slow it down just a little bit to help people kind of swallow what you just said, because it might be new information or weird or different, but hear me out. So when you're in the room and some creepy guy walks in, you can feel that.
Yes.
Okay. When you are in a crowded area and there's a fight about to break out, you can also feel that.
Yes.
When someone gets married and you're sitting in the audience and they're about to kiss the bride, you feel that anticipation and that excitement. And then a lot of people cry because it's so beautiful. So we might not be in the experience of something happening, but we're feeling the energy of that event happening around us, and it triggers emotion and behavior and all the things. So I just want to emphasize that we all have a sensitivity about us, some more than others, and some of us feel things deeper than others, but that's who we are. Like that part at least comes with it. And I would argue, in some ways, the experience of this withdrawal coming off meds is sort of a spiritual experience just because of the trauma associated and the way that we think about everything differently and the way we have to get back in tune with ourselves and we have to start listening to our intuition. And sometimes that can be overwhelming too, especially when it starts waking up after you're healing for a while. So I just want to put that out there so the audience can kind of think about that if they're sensitive in one way or another, or if they're shut off from it.
Yeah, and I want to amplify that and say that my experience, and I don't want to put this on anybody else, but my experience of all that pain and struggle and horrible, horrible stuff that we know about, I don't need to go into details, was an opening to a deeper sense of my spiritual nature and the love that I actually have within me, because that's exactly what I needed to get through it.
So before we get into the mediumship, because you're not my only friend who's a medium, actually, you're my second friend that's a medium. I want to talk about really quick some tangential, let's say, genres that I usually don't talk about on my channel. But having talked to you and having known you, there's a film that I want to just put here called Crazy Wise, and it's about people that have spiritual experiences that are interpreted or misinterpreted as mental illness when it's just the person is going through something awakening and might not make sense to you and it might be different and it might be weird, but our system is not really set up to differentiate. They just say weird, different, mentally ill. There's like a straight line there. So some resources here: the film Crazy Wise, Oryx Cohen, Will Hall, National Empowerment Center. They do some stuff about this. There are people in our world that identify like I was having a spiritual thing happening to me. I just needed to go through it. But because I got filtered into the mental health system, it kind of derailed me from that. And now I have to go backwards. So I just want to throw that out there for people in the audience. Not everybody is having a spiritual experience. Some people have a reaction to drugs from the first medication. It has nothing to do with spirituality. It's like their body just didn't like it. But I just want to put that out there if anybody needs some more resources.
Yeah, may I add to that too, Angie?
Please,
I'd like
if you
to
know
add
any. Yeah.
Yeah. The book that helped me most when I was just getting ready, but right before I started getting off the drugs, was called Spiritual Emergency by Stanislav and Christine Grof. Yeah, so Stanislav Grof's work has been really, really helpful to me. Also, there's a wonderful organization called the Integrated Mental Health University, run by Emma Bragdon, that has studied the Spiritists hospitals in Brazil, where they actually send mediums in with psychiatrists to help get clear on what's actually going on with a person who's going through an altered state or a spiritual emergency, a spiritual transformative experience, whatever you want to call it.
So I'm thinking, let's talk about some spiritual experiences that could happen in withdrawal while you're medicated, being cut off or being too open. Can you just talk about that? Like what that was like for you, what could help someone either if they're cut off or they're opening, or I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I had, after you and I talked the other day, I kind of dismissed something that you brought up to me, and I went, oh, I actually had that experience. Let me talk about that. I had, I was trying to remember how far into, how long I'd been off. I think I'd been off probably about 2.5, maybe 3 years, when I was participating in a group situation that was a process to invite old trauma up and deal with it. And I did what the person who was leading this thing suggested. And this thing came up that was kind of scary. And I don't want to go too deeply into it, but it came up and it was an energy that was a kind of like, the felt sense of it was like the thread. So for 6 months, I would wake up in the morning and I would feel this just, ugh, and it's like, and I knew that it happened by virtue of this thing that I was participating in, and it was a spiritual experience. And finally, I experienced this for like 6 months, every single morning. And so I'm just going to tell the story because it was kind of wild. It's like I was so sick of it. So I was sitting on the toilet one morning and I said, okay. And there was this part of me, and this is the part of me that is the part that healed me the most. This is the essence of what my healing has been. I decided to turn love on it. Instead of doing that contracted thing, instead of being fearful, instead of fighting it off, instead of doing all, because I mean, I didn't want any of that stuff that was happening to me. I didn't want those neuroemotions. I didn't want the akathisia. I didn't want any of that. So I would collapse around it. I contract around it. So instead, what I decided, I'll never forget this. I was sitting there and I go, okay, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. But my hunch is it's love. So what can I do for you? And what was interesting, Angie, is that my body, and this is where I think our intuition, this is where I think the healing is in our bodies. My body started feeling, instead of that contracted thing where I was trying to fight against what was happening to me, it just started letting go. It just started, and it went, and that energy that was haunting me for 6 months went away. It just went away. So yes, that stuff happens. It does.
Also, so most of the people I work with, they say, I can't feel anything good. I feel traumatized. I feel numb. I feel like I have no emotions. I can't feel anything. I feel like I'm shocked. I'm in a stunned state. How could I possibly feel anything spiritual? There's no way, Angie. I can't feel anything. I just feel torture.
The way that I dealt with that, Angie, for myself was this. Okay, here's the gift of dissociation. There's a little. Most of
There's
us
a gift
know
for everything. Yeah.
Dissociation is your tool here. Dissociation is your friend. This is where I would take myself and I would notice my suffering. I would notice I'm really suffering here. And so I would take this part of myself and separate it off and treat myself. What is it that my suffering self needs? If I had a me sitting beside me right now who could give that suffering self what I need, what would that be? And then I would just invent it. I'd make it up. And I'd say, oh, you just need, and there was sometimes I would talk to myself like I was a little girl. Sometimes I would talk to myself about sometimes I'd talk to myself from a place of being really pissed off and saying, this really sucks. And yeah, I get that you want to do what you want to do to that psychiatrist. I get it. but we don't.
I've heard a lot of those stories. We don't need to do that. We can imagine it, but we don't have to do it. No. Everybody has one of those.
Yeah. So it's like I just used this part of myself. I used what I was feeling to learn that there was a part of me that had love for me around it. And that was the piece. And I want to say that in some ways, this is also a mirror of some of the friends that I had who were peer supporters. I had a whole group of people in my life who are peer supporters, and the ability to sit with someone who's going through a really difficult time is a superpower. And I think that's what that whole process gave. That was the gift I got out of it, actually.
So I love the way you explain that, because I explain this in our groups as there's a part of you that's healed that knows that this is crazy. Like all these symptoms. This is not who I am. Why am I having these thoughts? This is so terrifying. And so our job is to not fight. These two shouldn't fight. This one is trying to comfort the other and trying to get you through it. And that inner resource of that part of me that knows that this is not okay. Like that one is comforting the other. So some people call it inner child, inner self, inner attunement. But it's like the journey to self is to absorb both into one as we recover. As the medication side effects come down and the destabilization comes down, the symptoms come down, then it's a little easier. But I also say, like, your body loves you so much. It's fighting so hard to keep you alive and to fix what happened. That's actually love.
And what
It doesn't feel like it.
what I feel about it is it's the divine part of me. It's the part of me that's connected to an energy. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to even call it. The energy that is love. That is love. So it draws upon more. And one of the characters that has been with me so much has been my grandmother. And so if I can't, I have a grandmother who has some Choctaw heritage, and if I can't call it up for myself, I bring my grandmother present. And those nights when I wasn't able to sleep, I imagined my pillow as my grandmother's lap. And, that brings the love energy, even if I can't feel it, I can imagine it. Even if I can't really embody it fully, I can imagine it. But that's the part that, from my experience, that helped heal me is the divine, is that nature that I think everybody in the world carries inside of them. And it's, the drugs distort that and mess up our nervous system so much that we can't access that easily. And that's what the whole process of healing was for me.
Yeah. So let's go back to your story. And I want to know, before I move to like, what was your healing part like? I'm wondering, when they gave you the medication, did it sort of silence and dampen that spiritual experience that you were right in the middle of?
It did for a while, but then what it did was it actually amped it up. And that's how I ended up needing a service dog, because I started getting to the point where I couldn't go into public without, I got lost in grocery stores. I couldn't, if somebody passed behind me too close, it felt like they were slugging me in the back. So my service dog that you met when you had Joe and I had Reethi was actually,
Joe, by the way, there's Joe.
Yeah, Joe's. Yeah, and I have a video of you going through. I actually have a video of you going through a service dog access test with Joe. And so Reethi was actually trained to keep people a certain distance from me. So she would go behind me. She would go between me and other people, so that I would have enough physical space so I wouldn't actually. But their body energy invaded me. I couldn't go in a grocery outlet because I could feel all the most of the poor people shop there, and I was overwhelmed with their despair. It actually, the hard part about that was it actually amped it up. The drugs actually amped up my energy sensitivity.
So then at some point, I assume, I don't know this part of the story, but you were like, I need to get off of this medicine or lower. So what was that decision like? Or what was your wake-up call?
My wake-up call was, I was hired to be in a peer support center to be the coordinator of peer supporters who were going into the emergency room to comfort people who were being evaluated for psychiatric holds. And one of my friends, who's one of the peer supporters, sometimes there are three things that happen. She handed me the Icarus Project guide to
harm reduction guide to safely reducting.
And she looked at me, and this was the part that unnerved me. She looked at me and she says, "Ellen, I don't believe in mental illness." And it was like, because I was like 12 years into it. I, multiple things. So anyway, that was an opening door. And then the next thing that happened was
But wait, did you take the book and read it? Or did you just think this lady is nuts?
Absolutely. Okay. It scared the living daylights out of me to get off those drugs. Oh my God. I was like, do I dare? Because here I am working in this peer support. I'm working with these mental health. I'm working with the people who are sending people to the hospital to be
Put
drugged.
away.
Yeah, exactly. But here's it. So at the same time, I got to get off the Klonopin. My anxiety is way over the top. I go in, so I have I'm reading the guide. I'm thinking about it. I go in to see the psychiatrist, and I said, this anxiety has just gotten way out of hand. He says, well, maybe if we take you off the Wellbutrin, you wouldn't have so much anxiety. And I thought, I have been taking that drug for 12 years. And I was furious. It was like he knew this all along. He was throwing Klonopin at it. He was throwing Seroquel at it. He was throwing Zoloft at it. And it was this, and it was like, oh no, no. And then the third thing that happened was, because I was coordinating this program, I was going over to the behavioral health office every week and meeting with the crisis workers who were actually doing the evaluations. I was gathering data. And this was a culture clash, because here we had the peers who'd had experiences in hospitals working with these people who were, making determinations that somebody needed to be hospitalized. But there was a lot of love and cooperation. So we were working out some of the details. And these crisis workers treated me like a colleague. They treated me with an incredible amount of love and respect. And one of them, the lead crisis, after a year, she looked at me and she says, Ellen, I've been working with you for a year. Where did you get the bipolar diagnosis? It's like, I just don't see it. And that was the tipping point. And that's when I started doing the taper I fired the psychiatrist. I enlisted my primary care doctor, who was lovely and actually believed me and was willing to work with me and help me with the deprescribing.
Wow. What did you think about all of it when you looked back and saw, wow, I just lived my life as a mentally ill person for 12 years?
There's so many different things. Of course, I was furious because it destroyed my career. My career was destroyed. And all of my savings ended up being paid. I was spending between $700 and $1,100 a month on psychiatric drugs. So my savings was gone. I at the time that I experienced was going through the initial tapering and everything, I had to continue to tell myself that I wasn't mentally ill, because I was getting a lot of blowback. I was actually, when I went to, there was one time when I went to a peer counseling center and wanted to talk to somebody because I was going through the process and I was in pain. And she just walked away from me because it scared her too much to know that I was coming off the drugs. And then because I was working with people in that setting, there was another woman I knew who, when I told her, she says, oh, you're going to, she gave me this dire, horrible, yeah. So, initially it was very, very difficult. But when I got to the point, when I actually stepped off, which was in December of 2015, just right before you, I was living like you're living. I had lost my home to toxic mold, and I was living, boondocking in the desert a lot. And I was able to see how strong I was. It was just right after stepping off, and I was a mess. I mean, I had the horrible stuff going on, but about 6 months into being completely off and living, I was in my little motorhome out in the desert with my 2 dogs and a parrot. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, I love this woman for what she's done. I faced it down.
Because it takes an enormous amount of courage to walk away from a bipolar diagnosis with a spiritual experience that scared you, or that you didn't know what to do with at the time, and then people around you are trying to keep you stuck, like no, don't do that. That's too scary or that's too crazy. And you don't even know what's going to happen. Like, it could come back. I could have a nervous breakdown and end up back in the psych ward. You were very aware of the system and how it works.
Well, I did. I had 2 altered states after I stepped off. I went through 2 altered states. I did.
So,
And
two parts of that question. One, what do you
yeah.
think gave you the surety that this was the right decision? And then when something cropped up, how did you handle it differently than running back and getting back on meds?
Well, first of all, about a year off, when I went back to my primary care doctor and she did my blood work and looked at the indicators of what was going on in my body, she literally said, "Your psychiatrist is trying to kill you." she used the same guidelines to help her sister-in-law get off of her psych drugs because she had PTSD or PTS. I don't like to put the D on it. So part of it was, ask the question again, because I was
what helped you be so sure to get off the meds was the right decision? What gave you the courage? Or
I didn't believe in that system anymore. I just lost my belief.
Changed.
There was something about it that just didn't seem right. And then I had another friend who was detoxing at the same time. And she and I were supporting each other. And I was watching her go through the hell of getting off Effexor. And it was like, it was much worse than what I was experiencing in some ways. But we helped each other understand that we were taking we were ingesting. It's like we sat down and we looked at each other. We were ingesting neurotoxins, and we were ingesting them, and they were messing with our entire and I'm going to call it what I think it is, this divine system of harmony that these bodies are being completely dysregulated by a neurotoxin, and in most of our cases, much more than one, usually 4 to 6 of them. So I was adamant that I didn't ever want to go back on them. And when I went through one of the altered states, I actually ended up with a psychiatrist who took the time to really listen to my story, to really listen to me. And he said, there's not even a category in the DSM for what it is that you experienced as a child. Because he said, PTS is usually associated with a particular event. And what you experienced was ongoing violation of your being and your personhood from the time you were a baby. So that's a completely different thing. But here's where this shifted for me. He recommended, I want to say it was a beta blocker. I don't remember what it was, but it was like a high blood pressure thing. And then I started seeing a therapist whose motto was skills, not pills. And he said, I went from the psychiatrist's office over to the therapist's office, and he looked at me and he says, "Oh, I can help you. I can teach you how to do that with biofeedback, and you don't even have to take those." So I never even really, I might have taken them for a week. And then as I was learning the biofeedback techniques, I could activate my parasympathetic nervous system and quiet myself down. So at that point, when this was happening, I was about 2.5 years off when all of this was going on. And I went through that altered state. And so it was a significant time off, but I learned how to activate my parasympathetic nervous system. And that's
helped you work through it. So that was one of the skills that you should have learned at the beginning, but did not. They gave you pills instead of that skill.
Yeah, that's right.
So now let's go to what was the healing process like for you? So I think me and you camped together. I don't remember how far off we were though. Was that like 4 years off or 6 years?
No, we were 7. We were 7? It was 2021. It was 2021. Okay. So, and it was August of 2021 because that was when I was homeless.
That's 5.5 then. 5.5.
Yeah, we
For
were
me.
about 5.5 years off.
And I remember I did not feel good.
No, I didn't either.
I did not feel good.
I didn't either. And I was also, at that time, I was also using cannabis because I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to sleep. And I was using it to sleep. And I, uh, that was another piece of fear I had to get over. I had to get over that I will go into an altered state if I don't sleep. I had to lose the cannabis because that was still messing with me. I'm just going to own it,
Well, there's people that do use things. I'm a harm reductionist too, that you gotta, some of us are not like purists and get off of everything and just tough it out. Some people use other things. I don't recommend anything in particular. It's just
Yeah.
people make their own decisions about what they need.
I feel like I needed it for that period of time because I was so afraid of not being able to sleep. And I was so afraid that I would be hospitalized again if I wasn't able to sleep. But I had to get to the point where the love, my ability to build my love for myself,
Yeah.
was strong enough that I could, and when I got off the cannabis, I just, I'd lie awake and I go, okay, well, all right, it's 3:00 in the morning. What do I want to do? I'll make myself a cup of tea, but it wasn't, I didn't constrict around it. I didn't constrict around that fear.
Trying to be open to it and be curious about it, let it happen.
Let it happen.
But there's a trust in that though that I think people struggle for. Like they feel so traumatized or so uncertain. I think it's more like this experience is so large. It feels so frightening and it's so intense. You don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. So how am I supposed to say to myself, it's okay, let it happen. Let it all be here. This is all for my higher good. I'm healing. Like, yeah, right. I feel like I'm being murdered.
Right.
But there is, I think everybody reaches it at a certain point. It just depends when you get there, because it does start out very terrifying and scary. And then you kind of relax in a little, like, okay, this is what suffering is like. I can't really do much about this. I'm not going to sleep. If my body needs to sleep, it's going to sleep when it wants to. So I need to settle in and buckle my seatbelt because I'm not going to sleep for a little while. And there's like, you got to kind of stop trying to chase it. And especially when people realize, like, I don't really want to go back to a psychiatrist and get put on Ambien because I can't sleep. So I'm going to have to learn how to be okay with this while it's here. But you're speaking to a larger issue I do want to mention, because I do support people that are coming off antipsychotics under medical supervision who they are scared. Angie, I don't want that to happen again, because that's what landed me in the hospital in the first place. And that was traumatizing. So we kind of try to do this exercise about how are these things the same and how are these things different. So a lot of people, their psychosis or altered state was triggered by marijuana or not sleeping or high stress or a narcissistic relationship or something. So, okay, is that happening now? Another part of it is, if you don't deprescribe safely and slowly, especially antipsychotics, there is reason to believe by the dopamine sensitivity hypothesis that you are more prone to have an altered state coming off those drugs too fast. So a lot of people are put back on medicine because their physician did not deprescribe them correctly. So there is just a little extra care with people with altered state histories or sensitivities or spiritual things. You do have to be more careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but especially we don't.
I want to go
especially,
back to the camping.
Yeah,
I want to go back to the camping thing because that's right. We were quite a ways off. We were both about.
I knew it was like about 6. So it was about 5.5
years off, and both of us were still struggling with the neuroemotions, the periodic akathisia. What were other things?
I just remember feeling like just really brain foggy. I didn't want to socialize necessarily. I didn't feel good, but I don't think I had akathisia at that point. I just still had like pretty high anxiety. My thoughts were not calm and organized. They were kind of all over the place, like ADHD-ish. I hate to use this language, but I just remember pain, fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, not wanting to socialize, but kind of making myself like, Ellen's here, I gotta go see her. I don't really want to, but I'm going. which turned out to be a good time.
You're
But it's
telling me
not personal.
something.
It's not personal to you. It's just I
I
felt
know,
like crap at the
yeah,
time, you know?
I know. But
I just
still,
remember.
I was in that too, and
Yeah.
I was newly homeless. So the stress
I think you were
was
living in
real.
a minivan and I was in a smaller van than this. Yeah.
You were in a van, and I was in a minivan.
You were in a minivan with your
Um,
dog.
with my dog, who almost had enough room to to sleep in the minivan with me. It was really, she was so sweet. But I want to say that, you know, for me, the akathisia that I experienced was an inner akathisia that had so much to do with the stress trigger. Whenever I was stressed, I would get this, and it was an inner thing. So
Surge.
I was experiencing that when we were camping because I was newly homeless.
So that stress.
Yeah.
So I remember when you started writing with us and the writing coming out of you was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So there's like this clarity of mind and healing and heart that kind of would come out in your writing. So can you take me through like what was the last 10 years like? What was your healing journey like if you had to share about that? And the overlap of spirituality, especially.
I want to kind of go into the mediumship thing because the writing, getting back to writing and realizing that I could write again was huge for me because it was like reclaiming the ability to express, to really express myself in language. Um, but the other thing that I was doing at that time was I was singing, I was singing for the for the dying. I was singing for people who were dying. And what happened for me was that was most significant was I had one experience of actually singing for someone when she did pass. And I had this,
But wait, you got to clarify because weren't you in a chorus at a hospice kind of
I
situation?
was in a
Explain that because they're
choir.
like, what is she talking about? Okay.
Yeah, I was in a
Yeah.
choir, and it was a threshold choir. It's called a threshold choir. And the experience I had right before when someone passed was in 2020, and it was like a week before they locked everything down, and I just was alone in this hospital room with this woman who was never getting any visitors. We were going in to sing for her, and I got this impression, I got this feeling like, you've got to go now. So I went to the hospital. I sat down with her. I sang 3 songs, and on the 4th song, she passed away. And this is when my particular quirk showed up, and I could
Superpower.
see, yeah, my superpower, and I could feel her. At first she was like all around the room, and then newly deceased people don't know that they're deceased, and I could feel her clairvoyantly and clairsentiently sit in the chair in the room and look at her body and look at me. And then she realized she was dead, and she asked me to sing something that was religious in nature. And so there was this telepathic communication. And I heard her asking, so I sang Into Thy Hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit, which is what Jesus said on the cross, but it's a song. And as I sang it, I watched this light escorting her up out of the hospital room, and she went away. And I sat there and I kept singing for a few moments. And then when I realized her spirit was out of the room, I went out and told the nurse that she was dead. But I waited for her to go. I waited for her to go. And then after the pandemic stuff eased and we were back singing with people in person, I started noticing loved ones in spirit around someone who was dying. And so I thought, oh, well, this is cool. I think I'm going to, and then at the same time, I started getting interested in mediumship. Long story short, I took a class. I went through a group, but I took a class from a woman named Suzanne Giesman, who was the former aide, and I'm going to get the wrong thing, but the top of the U.S. military. She was the aide to him, and she is now a medium, very well known. By the way, I want to mention a movie called Wolf's Message. that is based on a book that she wrote. Anyway, I took a class from her, and when I wrote to her about my experiences with spirit and singing at bedside and so on, she gave me a full scholarship to her class. So I was able to get my first mediumship class um, from Suzanne, and then I started practicing on the platform I work on now, which is Very Soul, which helps people develop their mediumship. And I'm now a verified professional medium on Very Soul.
I just want to say that experience that you had, I have had similar experiences to energies, to older people, to people that are sick. I get my superpower is, and I'm being very vague because I don't want to freak everybody out, but like I think that's what makes me a good coach sometimes, because I feel maybe things that people don't know that they need to hear or say. Sometimes I get little images, little download, and I'll be like, I don't know why I'm supposed to say this, but you know, it's not that I'm like, I think it's just a skill that came naturally because I was in touch with myself and in my body and present with people. It's not some woo esoteric thing that just I had to, you know what I'm saying?
I
So like
do, and I
it feels
believe
natural. It doesn't feel weird to me.
no, and I believe everybody has that ability. I believe every human being has that ability. I think some of us have it. It's kind of like playing basketball. Some of us play basketball better than other people, and some of us are taller and some of us are short. But it is a natural human ability, and I don't make any woo about it. I think it's something for me. It was something I've worked on. I've really worked on developing it. I've really taking classes and working with other mediums and really concentrating. But what it did for me was it turned that perception of my being delusional inside out. And
Say more about that.
well, you know, the experience I had when I was hospitalized and in an altered state was a very deeply spiritual experience. It was like being awake in a dream. It was like walking around in a dream in material reality. And so, because it was my own dream, nobody else is going to understand it, right? And according to them, I'm delusional. But in reality, there are, for me, and I think each of us we're so incredibly unique, each of us with our experiences and our lives and all that has come before. The uniqueness of our own perceptual field has some gift in it that is helping, from my perspective, helping me navigate life. It helps me navigate life. I've got to see through some of this material stuff to make good decisions about my moral character. I need to be able to see into that. And I believe that everybody possesses that. And that's what intuition is. I think intuition is that loving guidance that's inside all of us.
I
So
heard I heard a definition for intuition the other day. I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like intuition is the doorway, like the bridge between heaven and earth. Like it's the thing that like helps you navigate from like the best and most loving place that you who you are. And I just really like the way that sounds, for sure.
yeah, well, that's how I view it anyway. But I'm not can't remember what your question was now. I kind
That's
of went off.
okay. Well, so let me go back a little bit, because here's what I'm thinking of when I'm hearing your story. I'm thinking about a quote, another quote, because I love little quotes. But I saw it in one of the groups on Facebook, probably like 8 years ago, and it said something like, "It's not whether you're mentally ill or not; it's who you tell what happened to you, who you tell that to. It's their perception." So, for instance, when you said, I had this deeply spiritual experience, if you would have told that to a shaman or a priest, they might have helped you through it. But if you tell that to a psychiatrist, it's perceived through this lens of like illness or weirdness or differentness. And I'm not trying to like glamorize, like everyone should, flirt with their darkness with no guidance and massage it and entertain all of it, because I have seen people get turned inside out and they get kind of stuck in there.
Yes.
Kundalini workshops, silent vipassana workshops, psychedelics can cause extremely ayahuasca ceremonies experiences that their psyche cannot handle. And if the right person is not there with you, you're in a dangerous territory, in danger of getting medicated.
Right.
So I think it should be done responsibly. Some of these things are so dangerous, it scares the crap out of me. And I have clients that's what happened to them. They got a spiritual experience provoked because they tried to push it, and they tried to get that experience through a use of a drug or some kind of intense experience. And then boom, it's too much for them to handle, and the right people weren't there with them, so they got medicated. So it's just to say, I think it's what happened and who's with you, and then how you perceive it and how the people around you perceive it and how you could use it without getting lost in it, I guess. That's what makes sense.
And I think the main thing is not to chase it. It's forcing a
healing experience that I think is the problem.
Right. Because
the body doesn't work like that.
It comes naturally.
Exactly.
In my world, the healing and all of the steps that I went through, you asked me about the 10 years. I mean, it's been a long 10 years. It's been like several stints of difficulty. Yeah. This has not been this is not, and I can't say that that's done.
No, it's not done. Nobody's done.
Life dishes out what life dishes out. But the deal is that, there's a sense I have now that my life is divinely guided. And again, I don't want to impose a religious idea on it, but there's something deeply spiritual about being a human being and embracing what happens to me as being somehow, I want to say somehow I can use that, but I don't need to chase it because it's going to arise and occur naturally. And especially if I respect myself and the other people around me who are going through similar things. It's like, watching people in their distress and difficulty and allowing that. And you do an incredible job of that, Angie. I just want to say, just allowing that process and trusting that there is something inherently guiding each one of us, and we can follow it. We don't have to chase that up. We don't have to.
I'm glad you brought that up, just because people often, they're in the midst of the suffering at the worst part when they meet me. Okay, so they feel like this desperation, like I have to tell you my whole story, Angie. You don't understand. It's so bad. You got to hear this. Oh my god. And they're kind of freaking out. And I'm just sitting here calm as a cucumber. I'm like, I know where you're headed, though. Like, that's what I'm here for, is to be the anchor that you can't feel. I'm holding the health for you because I understand the whole process and the terrain. And a deep part of that is I know that each person's soul has their own plan and their own way. And I'm just here as like a touchstone to kind of keep them, or at least to even bring that awareness that you're not in charge the way you think you are. Okay, I know that sounds woo. I know. But it's true, because I just know, I know how this unfolds. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I want to take it even one step further beyond what you see to what I see when I work with clients, because I'm working with clients who've lost people to suicides, who've had children who've been murdered. I mean, I've had these experiences where in comes that soul and they tell a story, stuff I wouldn't know. This is evidential mediumship. I wouldn't know this stuff if these lovely souls wouldn't come back, but they're coming back to comfort their loved ones. They're coming back to apologize. They're coming back to acknowledge, the different things that have happened that they did. And what I recognize now, and I think the world would be a completely different place if we knew that we don't really die, that we actually get to the other side. And what I've learned from my mediumship is I want to clean it up now, because I don't want to be going to look for somebody like me to clean it up.
And I was like, I'm not going to end my suffering because I know I'm going to have to come back here, and I don't want to come back here. Well, I already knew that. I just knew that, like, I don't think you want to do that. This is an earth school. Everybody has their own belief system, but I was like, on some level, this is please do not latch onto this if it's not true for you. I'm not here to tell anybody what their life's purpose
Exactly.
is.
Yeah.
My life's purpose was, I knew on some level I signed up for this. I don't know why, except that like something prepared me for this to happen. And then when it happened, to get through it and then to turn it around and help other people get through it. And if it wasn't that bad for me, I would not be able to help people like I am. Do I like it? No. Was it like the worst thing that could have ever happened to me? Yes. But it's like
Yeah.
there's some kind of part of me that just knows like it's more than you think it was. It wasn't just an accident that just landed on you.
Well,
And
that
I'm not saying that's even true for everybody. I'm
that's
telling you
not, it wouldn't be true for everybody, but it is something that I think about and I have thought about. And when I was in the throes of what I experienced as really horrible in the recovery process, and I was introduced to the idea that I uh, designed my life this way, I thought, well, if I did, what the hell was I thinking? Because this sucks.
it doesn't have to make sense, but like on a
No,
spiritual
it
level, like
doesn't.
on the level of God and angels, it makes sense. Okay? It's
It
not the
may.
earth sense. It doesn't make sense on the earth part.
But
It's
right
fine.
now, what's true for me now is it's just a day by day living to the best I can and treating people in the way that I want to be treated,
Yeah.
And that starts with myself. It starts with myself, even if somebody else isn't there to step up for what it is I need. I'm the one. And paradoxically, that turns into really having some self-esteem because I've been the one who's taken care of what arises. So, yeah.
Amazing.
So
So that was a lot, and I think I could go another hour.
we can't do that.
I can't. I'm a little sleepy from it's starting to rain, so I
Oh,
should
please.
probably. It's so lovely. I can hear the pitter patter on the roof, but I just want to. I think I want to enunciate a few things that you said that are really, really important. Number one, being open to the experience more than closed off and fighting it so hard. Number two, what you did successfully, the way I see it, is you let go of a narrative that was keeping you really small and hurting you. And you opened to a different narrative, a different meaning for your life, a different mode of understanding, even though that was risky and challenging. And you have used your own suffering and your own experiences to help other people who are healing, which I think is fucking beautiful. So thank you for being the human that you are.
Likewise, Angie, you know how much I love and respect you,
I know. And we don't hang out enough. Do you still live on that island that I have to?
will you please? Yeah, you've got
I
to
don't.
be
Why
able
are
to get
you
it.
living on an island? I hate that.
Well, I want to say this. I love this place. I love where I live. It's absolutely beautiful, and I'm
So I have to
now.
just take a ferry to visit. I can
Yeah,
do that. I
or
could
you
do
could
that.
come over a bridge. You
I
can
don't
handle.
want the bridge. I already know
I
which
know.
bridge it is.
You could
There's
take
no
it,
way I'm taking that bridge. But
but
I would consider the ferry.
yeah, consider the ferry. But the thing about this island that I find so beautiful, there's a lot of magic here, and I wound up in housing where I can sit in the bed in the morning and I look out into the water. I can actually look out into the water when I meditate. So it's all okay. And that's why I live on the island. I want to be by a beach.
Of course. You live in a beautiful place. I know the general area. I've been
Yeah,
there before on the ferry.
you've
But
got to come
just
see me.
going by myself is a little different.
I
But
know.
I took a cruise, so I'm not really as scared of boats anymore. Thank God.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, come see me.
What would you leave with our audience? Especially, I always ask every single guest the same question at the end, and it is, what hope would you leave for anyone listening today?
I want to say that what I hope I would leave is at the core of each of us is the essence of love, that's what we're made of. And that's what heals me continually. And that's what heals. That's what heals. And that's what the core of us, and as bad as it may feel, finding that love to sit side by side with it is has been the key for me.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
My
being with
pleasure.
me today.
All
Yeah,
right.
thanks for sharing your story with us. And I'll put all of Ellen's links. If you want to tell them about your mediumship, I didn't even get to
Yes,
that. Ah, go
I want
back.
to. Yeah, I want to say Yeah, I work as a medium, but anyone in the world can get a free from verysoul.com. You can get a free reading from a medium like me. There's a very high ethical standard on this platform, which is why I support it. It is get a half an hour free, but what I do is I give sessions to help people connect with the loved ones that are no longer in bodies, so that they can experience that life continues, that life goes on, and in a way that proves itself. I don't know these people until they start telling me stories, and then I share them with my clients. So. All
Thank
right.
you, Ellen. Thank you all for being here. And if you leave a comment, Ellen will probably come back and answer it.
I probably will.
Probably
And
will.
I probably will. I will read them. This is the hard part about this, Angie, is that putting myself out here in this way. It's
Proud of you. You did it. You did it
I,
with me.
I did
You
it because
did a
I trust
great
you.
job. I did an amazing job.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.